Anthrax is a bacterial disease caused by the bacteria Bacillus anthracis and can live in an environment for decades in a dormant state. The bacteria are activated when stationed in a place rich with water, sugars, and other nutrients. This could be in a sheep, a cow, or even a human being. There are 3 ways that anthrax can enter your body: cutaneous, which is from a cut or a scrape; gastrointestinal, which happens when you eat undercooked meat from an affected animal; or inhalation, which happens when you breathe in anthrax spores. Each type of anthrax has a different mortality rate, cutaneous being the lowest at a 20% mortality rate without antibiotics, gastrointestinal anthrax at 25 to 75% mortality, and affects anywhere from your throat to your colon. Symptoms of gastrointestinal anthrax are nausea and vomiting. Finally, inhalation anthrax is the deadliest form at 80% or higher, even with treatment. Symptoms of inhalation anthrax are mild chest discomfort and flu-like symptoms for a few hours or days. Once the bacteria are active, they multiply and spread throughout the body, producing toxins which cause severe illness and death. Anthrax is not contagious, so you cannot contract it like the cold or the flu. It is most common in agricultural regions of Central and South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central and Southwestern Asia, Southern and Eastern Europe, and the Caribbean. Most livestock in the U.S. are vaccinated for the disease yearly if they are in an area that has had anthrax in the past. In 2016, a remote corner of Siberia called the Yamal Peninsula had an outbreak of anthrax for the first time in 70 years. Scientists theorized that the outbreak was caused by a heat wave which thawed the permafrost, and with it, an infected reindeer carcass. Soon, more than 2,000 reindeer were infected. Scientists believe the heat wave was caused by global warming, which released the disease from the permafrost, a perfect place for a dormant disease to be preserved. Anthrax is a binary AB toxin, which means it is a 2-component protein complex. Bacillus anthracis secretes a protective antigen, PA, with 2 enzymic moieties, an edema toxin and a lethal toxin. In the presence of a host cell surface receptor, PA can mediate delivery of the toxins from the extracellular milieu into the host cell cytosol to affect toxicity. Anthrax is thought to have originated in Mesopotamia and Egypt, and many scholars believe that it was the 5th and 6th plague from the story of Moses, which affected the livestock and then created boils on the Egyptian people. It is also believed that it was a part of the St. Antonine plague, which was a key point in the fall of Rome. During the 1800s, doctors saw cases of anthrax, but didn't have a name or diagnosis for the disease. One thing the doctors did notice was a link between the anthrax and the animal hair industry, so it became known as wool sorter's disease. In 1877, German physician Robert Koch used Bacillus anthracis to study the disease in depth. Koch discovered that the bacteria formed spores, determined the life cycle of the bacteria, and was able to demonstrate a causal relationship between a specific microorganism and a disease. In 1881, Louis Pasteur, a French chemist, took Koch's work a step further and created the first vaccine for anthrax. Pasteur took 50 sheep and vaccinated half of them. The vaccinated 25 survived anthrax, while the unvaccinated 25 did not. Then, nearly 70 years later, in the 1950s, the first human vaccine for anthrax was created, and it was 92.5% effective in preventing cutaneous anthrax. The vaccine was tested on a group of goat hair mill workers who were given either the vaccine or a placebo, and were then followed over a 2-year period. The 1900s also held the first deliberate use of anthrax as an act of aggression during the First World War by Germans. And in 1932, Japan began producing anthrax to be used as a weapon. Prisoners in Japanese-occupied Manchuria were infected with anthrax and other deadly diseases to see the effects. It was later discovered that Japan attacked at least 11 Chinese cities in the Zhejiang province, which are still healing from these attacks today. Just 10 years later, in 1942, during the Second World War, the US and Britain began experimenting with bioweapons, including anthrax. More than 5,000 US bombs were filled with anthrax in case Germany attacked. Britain tested the widespread release of anthrax by releasing bombs containing the bacteria over Gruinard Island, where 80 sheep had been placed. This helped scientists discover that Bacillus anthracis can lie dormant in the ground for long periods of time. The island remained uninhabitable until 1986, when Great Britain decided to decontaminate the island by soaking it in formaldehyde and seawater for a year. In 1969, President Richard Nixon terminated the U.S. bioweapons program through an executive order. The order stopped bioweapon research and production of the weapons. It also called for the destruction of the arsenal. The U.S. also adopted the policy to never use any biological or toxic weapons under any circumstances. Studies on diseases like anthrax were then focused on defense, such as vaccines and medication. In 1972, a treaty was signed prohibiting the development, possession, and stockpiling of pathogens or toxins. The treaty also required all the countries who signed it to destroy all stockpiling of pathogens and toxins within 9 months of signing the document. In spring of 1979, there was a large outbreak of anthrax in Sverdlovsk, USSR. There were 96 cases in humans, where 79 were described as gastrointestinal anthrax, while the other 17 were described as cutaneous. Unfortunately, of the 79 gastrointestinal cases, only 15 survived. Perhaps the biggest event in U.S. history was the fall of the Twin Towers on September 11, 2001. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives, but what happened nearly a week later would no doubt help fuel prejudice against the Middle East. On September 18, 2001, anthrax was released into the mail system and infected 22 people, 12 of which were postal carriers. Five of the 22 infected died, and the tensions were already high. With the country already up in arms with the Twin Towers, recent job layoffs, and dengue fever, the threat of bioterrorism left everyone pointing fingers. These fingers ended up at Dr. Bruce E. Evans, a biodefense researcher at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institution of Infectious Diseases, or USAMRIID, to the CIA, to Muslims, and even to Jews. It was released in 2010 that it was Dr. Evans responsible, and he sadly took his own life in 2008. In conclusion, the band anthrax is much less serious and grave as its namesake. The disease caused by Bacillus anthracis is nothing to scoff at or make light of, and its history shows its lethality.